morning. Welcome to another in our post-cabinet press briefing. This morning we have a very special morning where we have representatives from the Ministry of Education and Youth. I would like to welcome members of the media who are here with us this morning. Also, I'd like to welcome you, our viewers and listeners, for another in our series of post-cabinet press briefings. I will begin by inviting the Minister of Information, the Honorable Favour Williams, to join us. Sorry, I have given up my job apparently. The Minister of, it's going back to a former life. So the Minister of Education and Youth, also a Permanent Secretary, Ms. Maureen Dyer, is here as well. I would like to invite Minister Williams to make her presentation here at the podium. Minister. Thank you.
Minister Morgan. Good morning, everyone. Let me acknowledge the Honorable Minister Morgan, Minister of Information, our Permanent Secretary Acting, Mrs. Maureen Dwyer, other members of the team from the Ministry of Education and Youth, members of the media. So for this morning's presentation, I have two sections. One, just a brief update on what has been happening in the education sector, and then I will speak to the issue of a press release that we put out yesterday. So since the start of this academic year, which started in September of last year, many positive things have happened for the education sector. We don't always hear about them. We try to put them out, but we don't always see them duplicated in the media. And so we're using this forum this morning to highlight some of them. You may not know this, but 1,000+ new teachers came into the profession, and we're expecting at least that number in the upcoming school year. Our teachers' colleges continue to attract persons who want to be teachers. We're encouraging more males to take up teaching. For those who are in the service, we continue to offer training, and during this school year, we offered 398 hours of in-service training to about 45% of our teachers, and that would be some 11,270. We also had a UNICEF study that confirmed for us that 87.1% of teachers either strongly agreed or agreed that despite the issues confronting education and the socioeconomic issues and challenges facing Jamaica, which impact the education system, they are still passionate about teaching. We've instituted an online repository of educational resources which support teachers in their preparation, planning, and delivery of the curriculum. And this repository includes a lesson bank, a lesson plan bank, and other teaching resources, currently totaling over 600 items, with a further 500 lesson plans under review to be added before the end of this academic year. Why am I telling you this? Because when I started at the ministry, this was a significant complaint coming from teachers about the number of hours they have to spend on a weekend putting together lesson plans. And so we set about using our teachers' colleges and our universities to help us to put together lesson plans aligned with the national standards curriculum, so these could be available for our teachers. And I'm happy to report that we have done just that, but we will continue to add lesson plans. At the end of the day, we want there to be a lesson plan for all subjects and for all grades. We've made progress as well in terms of the recommendations of the Jamaica Education Transformation Commission report. Technology and infrastructure is a significant pillar of the recommendations coming out of that report, and we're pleased to say that we've made significant strides. So starting with the slide that you have, you will see that as of May 12th, if you could turn the slide, 2023, which is this year and this month, through or implementing agency e-learning, they've delivered 16,053 e-vouchers for laptops to our teachers in primary schools and secondary schools. Let me back up a bit. I'm getting ahead of myself. Let's start with the number of schools that have been connected to the internet. To date, 438 of our schools have good connectivity to the internet. Our plan for this year is 252 schools to be connected by the end of this fiscal year, March 2024. That would put us at about 68% of primary and secondary schools, or 690 schools, connected to the internet. And the work continues after that. In terms of pictorially, if you look at the map of Jamaica, to see schools that are already connected, that's what the map looks like. And if you go to the other slide that shows the schools to be connected this year or are being connected this year, you will see most of the work is going to be on the north towards the east of Jamaica. If you overlay those two maps, it will give you a good picture of where we will be at the end of this fiscal year. Additionally, still continuing with the technology theme, we introduced and are continuing with coding in schools. To date, 769 of our teachers have been trained to be facilitators in classrooms. We want all of our children to understand what is coding, to understand this machine language, and we know that some of them will take to it and become star coders, and that's what we're expecting to see in the years ahead. Additionally, as of May 12th, 2023, this month that we're in, through e-learning or implementing agency, we delivered 16,053 e-vouchers for laptops to our teachers in primary and secondary schools. So far, 14,251 teachers have redeemed their vouchers. We encourage those who haven't to really redeem and begin to use the technology in the classrooms. They can always download things that they find on the internet to help to enrich their classes. Additionally, we announced some time ago that all of our children, and we continue, have the MOE Schools email. Recently, we came to an arrangement with Microsoft to make available to all our students, high school, primary school, to our teachers in teachers' colleges, the entire suite of Microsoft products, which would be Teams, Word, Excel, PowerPoint, and so on. It's because we want our children to become familiar with these applications and to use them in preparing their work. This is available for them. They can put it on, they can download it, as long as they access their MOE Schools email address, and they can access it on up to 5 devices. So not only for them, but for their brother, their sister, or their parent up to 5 devices can get the entire suite of products. We also have been upgrading computer labs in our high schools, and I'm particularly proud to announce that all of the computer labs in our high schools have been outfitted with brand new laptops. And as you can see, that's one example of a school with the students actually in the lab using the computers. In the years ahead, our students will be required to use the computers for e-testing. CXC has indicated that that is where they're moving. So CSEC and CAPE exams and others will be done online. So we have to get our schools prepared. We have to get our students prepared for it as well. The next slide, please. And if we continue on to infrastructure, I'm also pleased at the work that the ministry has been doing coming out of the COVID-19 pandemic. We took a real focus on schools' infrastructure, particularly critical maintenance and infrastructure work. Looking back over the last fiscal year, 130 schools at a cost of $305 million saw critical maintenance and infrastructure work over the last year. For this budget year that we're in, we got an increase in the budgetary allocation to $440 million, dedicated for providing critical maintenance and infrastructure work in our schools. And in terms of the number of schools that will see electrical upgrading projects, 49 schools for a budget of $244 million. Fencing project, construction of security fencing projects will happen at 56 of our schools. Next slide. This is a picture of Black River High School. It might be a little bit dated, but it gives you a sense of the number of students there. We're happy to report as well that as of this new school year coming up in September, Black River High School will be off of the SHIFT program. And we continue to work so that we get all the schools, primary and high schools that are on the SHIFT program to be off the SHIFT program. In the next set of slides, I'm not expecting you to read them, but I just want to show you the number of schools that are planned for major infrastructure work. And you can just scroll through just to give you a sense of the magnitude of the work that's in progress in our school system. So that's infrastructure, technology and infrastructure in primary and high school. We're also putting in more infrastructure in our early childhood sector, especially we're adding more brain builder centers for our children who are in the first 1,000 days of their life. Brain Builder Center is the government's response to providing daycare, the equivalent of daycare for our children. We believe wholeheartedly that our children at that age, 0 to 3 years old, should be in an environment in which they're given stimulation, that they have trained practitioners who understand play at that age, how to play with kids, how to encourage them along. And so we have a plan to continue to build out brain builder centers all across Jamaica. For this year, you can see the plan is for there to be 10 in Kingston and St. Andrew, St. Catherine 7, Clarendon 4, St. Mary 4, St. Anne 2, St. James 2, Manchester 1, for a total of 30 brain builder centers. For many years now, Jamaicans have been calling for the education sector to bring back civics in school. We did a survey. We found out that less than 10% of our schools actually timetabled civics. As of January of this year, we announced that we are implementing in a much broader and fuller way civics in schools. As of this month, when we did another survey of the system, many more schools are teaching civics. In fact, 291. So about a third of our schools. And we're continuing to ensure that we get to all of our schools teaching civics. Just a little bit on our school feeding program. We got an additional $2 billion this year, adding to the amount that we spend for school feeding. Primarily, children who are vulnerable are on the program. And for the upcoming school year, our aim is to feed 180,171 students. And you can see how it breaks down across the early childhood sector, infants to grade 3, primary, all age, primary and junior high, secondary schools, and ward of the state. We take school feeding extremely important. It's an important activity that we do at the ministry. We know that many of our children sometimes show up without having breakfast, so we provide breakfast, cook lunch in schools that have cafeteria, that have canteens. There are some children who get snack as well. And we will continue to advocate for the program to be expanded because we know the importance of it. Additionally, we know that for the schools that provide facility for children to get meals at school, the cost of those meals are prohibited. They are very expensive. So the more we can do to help our children in terms of nutrition, feeding program, it will greatly assist in education. Those are some of the highlights from the education system. We have many more in terms of progress we've made, improvements, and so on. But I will just stop there this morning and to say that we'd love to see our media help us to emphasize the positives in the education sector. We're calling on you. You are the ones that decide what it is that you put out there in the public domain. I want to shift now to a press release that was published yesterday, and that release focused on a newspaper article, I think it was online, that the Jamaica Observer printed. And the title of the story was, "A teacher in my parish got $6.68 for salary in March 2023. And the Jamaica Observer quoted the president of the Westmoreland chapter of the Jamaica Teachers Association, Carrie Ann Wollaston, as saying, "There was even a teacher in my parish who got $6.68 for her salary in March and was not paid the correct amount up until now." The Ministry of Education and Youth is declaring that that statement is blatantly false. We can confirm the salary of that teacher. Obviously, we will not publish any names or of the teacher or the school, but we've given in that press release the exact gross salary, and gross salary is before any deductions. We've also given the net salary, which would be net of the deductions for NHT, any income tax, NIS, any education tax, and including deductions that go to credit unions or other places. We're finding out that when some teachers look at their pay slip, they forget that they asked the ministry to send some of their monies elsewhere. And so when they look at their net pay sometimes, it is smaller than they're expecting. But they ought to remember that they're the ones who asked us to send part of their salary to a credit union, an insurance company, or wherever else it needs to go to. And in this case, there was a deduction going to a credit union as well. So we continue. We will, as of now, whenever these issues come up, we are going to research them and we're going to put it out in public. We're tired of just the negatives around this, the innuendos. We're tired of the false claims, and we'd like the president of the JTA, Mrs. LaSonia Harrison, to bring us specifics. It does us no good for her to continue to speak in generalities. We can't research a generality, but we can research a teacher, a particular teacher. We can look at the pay slip of a teacher and try to answer the questions that that teacher may have. We will research, and we have been doing so. There are teachers that have come with specific situations, and they've gotten responses. In the press release, I demonstrated that Mrs. Harrison herself has brought to us two or three or four, I think, it depends on how you count it, situations, and we have responded. In the cases she's brought to us, in one case, she brought a situation in which she said that teacher had not gotten paid and the teacher needed her money. Teacher is a cancer patient, but when we checked, that teacher had already called, spoken, and funds were long released to that teacher. The latest was that there are two teachers in an infant school, another teacher in another infant school that had not received their salaries. When the research was done, the ministry, these teachers, well, let's say the ministry did not receive a continuation letter for the teacher because some of our teachers are on one-year contract, right, Dr. Troop, 1 year. And at the end of that year, the school has to decide if they want that teacher to continue or not. And the school has to inform the ministry. All our schools are like little mini companies with a board of director. They have a CEO in the form of a principal. And we have to get that information in order to continue to make payment. Additionally, one of the teachers at the other infant school was on a no-pay leave, and no resumption letter was received. And there are other examples that we could cite of persons who asked specific questions about their particular paycheck, and they've gotten response. We have published several telephone numbers for teachers to call to report their specific situation. We also have an email address to which teachers can send the specifics of their situation. And as I said in the press release, we respect the rights of the JTA to advocate on behalf of its members, but there has to be rationality, right? We cannot research generalities. We can give you adequate research and response for the specific situation that you bring to us. We believe that a destabilized education sector serves no one. These are issues that the JTA can bring to us. We have a monthly meeting with the JTA. Traditionally, they brought the issues to that monthly meeting. We research and we give them the answer. And we try our very best to ensure that we check off, tick off, complete on what it is that they bring to us. We'd love to go forward with an education sector that is hunkered down to help our children to read better, write better, understand better. That is our entire focus at the Ministry of Education and Youth, to provide the resources that we can within the budgets that we have. We have to live within the confines of our budgets. So we want to continue to provide as much as we can in a timely manner for the system, and to be responsive to issues that come up. It's a large system, 25,000 teachers or so, almost 600,000 students when you add the early childhood sector, 1,010 primary and high schools across Jamaica, 2,000 plus early childhood institutions. We have another, 10,000 or so persons working in the system as administrators, cooks, gardeners, and so on. So it's a very large system that the Education Ministry oversees. But we wake up every day to do the best that we can to provide all that we can to our teachers, our students. But when we have mischief in the system, we have to deal with it head on. So thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you so much, and I'll take your questions. Or Minister Morgan, you can say when I take questions.
Questions from members of the media? All right, Halshay?
Good morning, Minister Halshay Burke, Radio Jamaica. There were indications that there are 1,198 guidance counselors in the school system, and there's a need for additional guidance counselors. Is the ministry managing to employ the additional guidance counselors that are necessary? What are the plans for that?
Sure, thank you for that question. We will be the first to admit that at this moment, when you look at the ratio of guidance counselor to the number of students, that ratio is there are too few guidance counselors to the number of students. We would love to increase the number of guidance counselors we have, and we, every year we will. But it's going to take us some time to get to that ideal ratio, which is about 1 to 500. We're at about 1 to 700 or so now. It will take us some time to get there, but we have a commitment because we understand that our students across the length and breadth of Jamaica, they need guidance, they need psychosocial support, and that is something we have to put more of in our schools. So there's a commitment from the Ministry of Education, and we'll continue to increase the number of guidance counselors. In fact, this year we added 100. We added about 100 guidance counselors this school year.
Just to piggyback on that, the Independence City Primary has had issue with their guidance counselors. What's the ministry doing in relation to that?
I have written a very long letter to the chairman of the school explaining the process at the ministry. Over the years, over the decades, teachers used to be just hired at will without any centralization of of that process. And you find that teachers are hired without a postcode. All government jobs are supposed to have a postcode. And when you do that, and those same teachers get to retirement, they find out that they can't get their pension because there was no postcode. And then it takes a long time for that to be sorted out. With the implementation of the government's HR and pension system, it requires anyone who's been hired by government in the Ministry of Education to have a postcode, which means we have to go through the process of applying for it, and then we're able to do the hiring. I explained to the chairman exactly the process where we are and why is it that the school had one but doesn't have one now. That teacher was hired into a post that didn't exist. The teacher retired, and we can't continue to do these things in the education system. And then you get to some point, and it's that same teacher who's going to have problems. So let us do things right. Independence City will get a guidance counselor, but we're going to do it the right and proper way.
Good morning, Minister. Arthur Hall from the Jamaica Observer. Two-part question, Minister. One, there was a scheduled meeting at the Ministry of Labour yesterday between the Education Minister and the JTA. We haven't heard anything out of that meeting. We don't even know if it was held. And two, based on your release yesterday, it seems the relationship between yourself and the President of the JTA has completely broken down.
Okay, as to your first question, a meeting between the Ministry of Education and Youth and the Ministry of Labour and Social Security was held on Friday morning. Obviously, our representatives from the Ministry of Education and Youth were there. The meeting concluded, and the Ministry of Labour and Social Security did put out a press release as to what happened or what were the conclusions in that meeting, meaning schools would reopen on Monday, which was 2 days ago, and that a meeting would be held with the Ministry of Finance and the Public Service yesterday, which also happened. So that's where we are. Okay. So in terms of your second question, since I've been at the Ministry of Education and Youth, I've prided myself with having a very cordial and professional relationship with the Jamaica Teachers Association. I take seriously the monthly meetings that are scheduled. I ensure that whatever issues come to the fore, research is done, and we're able to respond at the next meeting. I respect the Jamaica Teachers Association. I respect the role that they play, but I just have to respond when there is mischief in the system. The ministry can't be silent. The ministry has to respond to say, that is not so, or this is how it is from our perspective. There are lots of negatives out there in social media. Mrs. Harrison gets a lot of platforms on which to speak. And so the ministry has to respond to let Jamaica know the other side of the equation. We have to respond with what we know. And if it isn't so, it just isn't so. So that's where we are.
Minister, you really have answered my second question, do you know? Has the relationship between yourself and Mrs. Harrison broke down? Is it still a relationship that can work together for the rest of Mrs. Harrison's term?
We have been working together with the Jamaica Teachers Association. We have to. Like I said, we respect who they are and what they do. However, again, I repeat, we have to respond. If someone is going around talking about the ministry not responding, talking about generalities, we have to respond to let Jamaicans know, as I said, what's the other side? We have to bring balance to the situation.
Minister Halshain again. There were plans for the centralization of payments because some schools are bursa paid. What is happening in relation to that plan?
Okay, it's still being executed. We put in place a pilot to look at, I think, 2 or 3 bursa schools, the larger ones, to make sure that we understand their processes and exactly how we transition them onto the system. In time, we will see the transition of the payroll and pension systems onto the government's central platform. It allows us to manage better. Right now, there are 2 different systems of paying our teachers. The central ministry pays about 18,000 teachers, and our high schools, several of our high schools individually pay their teachers. There ought to be centralization of that process. The government has spent a lot of resources putting in the MyHR Plus. Many ministries are using it. The Ministry of Education is coming on board. All of our teachers paid centrally by the Ministry of Education are on the system, and we will work to get those other schools on.
All right, Minister, you mentioned earlier in the presentation about the shift system. So I'm going to ask 2 questions. How many schools are still on the shift system, and what is the plan for phasing out of the shift system? And also, if you can speak to the CPFSA, there has been an acting head. What are the plans for a permanent head, and what is the situation with the leadership of the CPFSA?
All right. In terms of the shift schools, I'm sure you understand why the shift schools came about, was to accommodate as many children as we could in schools. We found out over the years, over the decades, that yes, while that was a temporary situation, we ought to get all of our schools off the shift system. I inherited 30 schools or thereabout that are on the shift system. And we've set about ensuring that we get the adequate budget allocation to create additional classrooms so that in time we can take all those 30 schools or so off the shift system. We're happy to report that for the next upcoming school year, September 2023, Black River High School will be off the shift system, and we continue to work to build more classrooms so that those schools that are on shift can get off of shift. And then with regards to the CPFSA, you're correct, there's currently an acting CEO, but I do know that the offices of the Service Commission is in the process of interviewing candidates, and in short order, they will let us know which candidate was chosen to be the new CEO of the CPFSA. As you are aware as well, the Prime Minister recently announced that Minister Marsha Smith will be at the ministry as a state minister with a focus on the child protection sector. So I want to welcome Minister Marsha Smith to the Ministry of Education and Youth, and we look forward to just bringing you up to speed as quickly as possible on that sector. It's a huge sector, it's an important sector. Annually, just a staggering number of children that are abused in our society. We have to get out there into communities with programs to help the adults in the lives of these children understand their role as caregivers, not as abusers. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Minister.
Thank you, Minister. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Minister. Really appreciate you and your team taking the time. I see Minister of State Marsha Smith has arrived, as well as your acting CEO, Dr. Kassan Troop. Want to thank members of the media. I suspect we have exhausted our questions this morning. And also thank those who are online who have been listening, and also the team from the Jamaica Information Service, the Office of the Prime Minister, and the Public Broadcasting Corporation of Jamaica. Until next time, we will be here, 8 a.m. sharp, next week, Thursday, for another post. I don't know what's going on with me this morning, you know. I jump in, my brain is moving too fast. Next week, Wednesday, at 8 a.m. sharp, for another post-cabinet press briefing. Thank you and have a wonderful day.